All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Isaac Jordan. For those who don't know me, my name is Isaac Jordan. And um, give me a second here, guys. I have a question, okay? I have a question that I've been wondering about here. And that question is, I'm sure you can tell by the title of the video. Do we really need hugs? I feel like I've seen it around a bit. Um, Maybe you have two. You need four hugs for survival. This is what they say on the streets. Survival not being a literal term, but more meaning like required to like manage stress, like basic stress levels, I guess, kind of thing. You need 8 hugs for maintenance and 12 hugs for growth. I just don't even ask me what happens if you have 16 hugs a day. We're not going to talk about that. Anyways, so this kind of ideology was peddled by a woman called Virginia Satir. Um, she was born in 1960, 16. She passed away in 1988, unfortunately. So she was 72 years old. Seems like she had a pretty good life. And she was called the mother of family therapy. Okay. So she obtained a master's degree in social work. And after she graduated, she opened up a private practice doing like family therapy. Um, and she believed a lot in like healing families, in that if you had a strong like family unit, then like the effects of that would be, very important. It would allow those individuals, having a healthy family structure to kind of make an impact on other people around them. So kind of like go from the family like outwards, right? That kind of thing. From what I understand, this Virginia Satir, she was pretty widely regarded and like acclaimed, if you will, pretty widely celebrated. She wasn't pulling this out of nowhere. You know what I mean? There was some merit to these claims. Okay, all I'm saying is I trust her. Just from what I was reading, I'm telling you, I think her word is to be taken pretty seriously. So, but I wanted to confirm for myself. Is she just talking the talk, or do the hugs walk the walk? So, next thing we need to talk about here is car. No, um, cortisol awakening response is what that means. So, I got into this study called Hugs and Cortisol Awakening Response the next day, an ecological momentary assessment study. So, what car, well, actually, we're going to get into that. But the first thing the study mentioned was that Harry Harlow study with the monkeys, and how, the baby monkeys, they were more drawn to like the cloth mother, the warm cloth that provided like that safety and security, kind of the feeling of physical touch, compared to, the evil wire monkey mother who provided food but no like warmth or social kind of benefit. Just so you guys know, for those who don't know, I am a business major, so all this science stuff is potentially lost on me. But I'm trying my best to give you like the scoop. So please bear with me if you're like actually kind of smart. I just thought this was like interesting, but like yeah. Anyway, and then they got into some previous studies that were done that kind of set the stage here. So there were some studies that kind of proved that um, like between romantic partners, like hand holding and hugging before like being introduced to certain stressors, it would result in lower cortisol levels. And these findings were also replicable or found like in their everyday life too, not just in that like lab setting with that stressor, whatever that was. So there was some proof that like social interaction, warmth, and that kind of stuff, at least between these romantic partners, resulted in lower cortisol levels. Um, so that's good. We all know, got to keep the cortisol down, right? Prevent you from like going bald and stuff. Anyway, so um, into like their actual study, what they were finding. So first of all, your cortisol awakening response is kind of like your body in the morning. Well, not really necessarily in the morning, but as you're waking, whenever that might be, kind of spikes your cortisol to kind of prime you for the stressors of the day. Okay. So it kind of primes you for like any kind of stressful environment that you're anticipating being in. So An important thing to note here is that like hugs and like physical interaction or like so that kind of stuff is like a safety signal for your body and your mind. They kind of indicate that like the environment you're in is somewhat safe, right? Which would result in like a reduction of stress and cortisol. Um, so with that cortisol awakening response and that kind of spike to prime you for your day, you might get like an over adjustment or a higher cortisol spike if you have a lack of those safety signals, such as hugs. So that's kind of like the basis for the study, right? Um, and just preemptively here, higher cortisol awakening responses were associated with self-reported loneliness. So that kind of goes hand in hand with that. So the study itself involved students from the University of California, the year 2018. So it wasn't an awful long time ago. Um, there was I think there was a pretty good spread of like male, female, like ethnicity, all that kind of thing. Obviously, they're 18, 19ish years old at the time of the study. Um, but they were only paid $25 to do the study. It's like it's like equivalent to say, I don't know, like a shitty Lego set or like I don't know, a handful of coffees. I don't know. I personally don't know if I would consider that worth my time. But anyways, I guess they participated. That's fine. They did what they had to do. I believe this wasn't during like syllabus week or anything, so there was definitely a presence of stress, as well as they're going to college. I'm pretty sure they were first year students, so um, clearly there's gonna be some stress here, which is important. But anyway, it's pretty much the methodology here was these students were prompted throughout the day randomly. I think like in certain time blocks, they get a message on their phone, and what they would do is to collect salivatory cortisol like levels and collect that and keep that to and there were places around campus you could like drop it off or whatever the hell. And they would also report each time like if they had been hugged since the last prompt, and I think maybe how many times if so. Um so yeah, and there's a whole obviously like I said there's a whole bunch of like math and science and stuff that goes behind all of this, but the bottom line here after all of that, computational crap. It's stuff, yeah, I couldn't wrap my head around it, but that's why they have the abstract, I guess. So, um, let me see here. So, following days where students, they had more hugs more often, they would have lower cortisol awakening responses. So, ultimately, kind of came to a conclusion. Although they did mention there were some factors that they wish they would be able to account for more, because obviously some more context might be required, such as like, well, who's hugging me? I don't know. Or like, what's going on there? We don't know. There's a lot of things at play. But bottom line here, having more hugs meant that in the morning, your cortisol spike was lower. That's huge. No? That's pretty huge, I think. Now, does that necessarily mean that you need like 4 or 8 hugs? Like, I really couldn't tell you. But like, I low key believe it, to be honest. I mean, more hugs resulting in lower cortisol, like, it's right under our nose, like, it's right in front of us. So, I guess the bottom line here, what I'm trying to tell you, like, I guess you should, like, go give someone a hug or something, like, if you want them to not have high cortisol. So, um, yeah, that's kind of all I have to tell you today. So, like, yes, the answer to the question is yes, hugs are good and they're beneficial. And, um, yeah, I guess that's really it. So, thank you for listening in. I hope that you learned something today and you feel motivated to give somebody a hug. Thank you so very much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.